Ашема? Все, коллеги, время 15 часов.
Okay, colleagues, it's 3 p.m. Dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to welcome you here and like to thank you for participating in our session dedicated to financial inclusion. I'd like to take this opportunity and congratulate you on 30th anniversary of Tеңге. As you know, according to the definition of the World Institution, financial inclusion is the availability to all the financial service to all people. In Kazakhstan, we have high level of penetration of financial services, so we have a lot to be proud of. But the average numbers do not indicate the problems faced for the regular citizens. Sometimes our financial organizations do not open their services to some people, so there are some difficulties for disabled people, for elderly people. The activities for regulation, for financial affordability aimed at creating equal conditions when each person, regardless of its location, regardless of its income, regardless of its health status, could get adequate financial help. The basic set of financial services includes lending, security, deposits. The priority direction of financial services for agency and financial institutions is the provision of availability of financial services to suburban and far territories for people with disabilities, for elderly people, and immobile people. Increase of affordability, financial inclusion to all the citizen categories. For individual entrepreneurs, small and medium-sized business, an increase of assortment and inclusion through implementation of online channels for citizens to decrease risk of digital inequality. The essential part is the financial awareness, and which allows to give access to financial services, increase of financial inclusion, as we said before. Without financial literacy and protection of consumers' rights can have a negative impact for financial well-being. So enhancement of World Bank, enhancement of awareness is aimed at helping people to figure out how to choose financial services, how to avoid threats, financial frauds, how to evaluate the risks from certain products. So about this, we will talk about in our session financial inclusion, the methods, limitations, beneficiaries. As a result of this session, dear journalists, you can ask your questions. First of all, I'd like to point out that the general financial growth starts with financial inclusion. Financial inclusion is the investment that opens a wide range of opportunities and long-term opportunities for all citizens. Financial inclusion is achieved through new technologies, which turns business through special reforms. According to World Bank, the availability of financial services like lending, like insurance, allows the enterprise to decrease entrepreneurial risks, to expand activities, to create employment opportunities. World Bank is putting a lot of effort into providing more rights for consumers and increasing financial awareness. The World Bank has launched a world program as part of which different countries will be participating. I'd like to give the floor to the Senior Financial Sector Specialist with the Finance, Competitiveness and Innovation Global Practice of the World Bank, and our good friend Ganabatar Jambal. So the report is the latest trends in the world in the financial sector. So I'd like to take this opportunity and thank the organizers of the Congress for invitation and for giving this presentation. I'd like also to take this opportunity and congratulate all the financiers, all the participants on the 30th anniversary of Tеңге. Now allow me to start this presentation. Presentation on financial inclusion. Given the time limits, allow me to begin. I'd like to emphasize certain changes in the area of financial inclusion in the world market. So first, before we begin the presentation, a little disclaimer. Next slide, please. So here I'd like to shortly discuss the global practice, the trends in financial inclusion, access to banking, financial accounts, access to loans, very short review on financial inclusion in Kazakhstan, then third, the obstacles to improvement of financial inclusion in World Bank member states, and shortly about the recommendations. So first, speaking of financial inclusion, before we get to crediting, to deposits, to insurance, most important is to provide financial inclusion from financial organization of banks. If we look at the global practice in terms of access to accounts, the level is very different from region to region, from country to country, and there are different problems in African countries. Also, there are problems in Southern Asia. For the past 10 years, despite the difference, there was some progress made. For example, 2011, half of the adults around the world, they didn't have access to bank accounts. By 2021, the indicator has improved, and in 2021, it was 76%. If we talk about the numbers, in 2014, the World Organization was developing the strategy of financial inclusion. At that time, the whole world had 2 billion people that didn't have any financial account in the bank or other financial organization. In 2021, this indicator is 1.4 billion. So in 6 years, 600 million people received access to financial accounts. The World Bank has a global database which is called Global Findex, and as part of this, we do the breakdown, very detailed breakdowns on certain parameters: gender, the income level, education, unemployment. So I skipped one slide, sorry. So it's 2 billion. So here's the breakdown on parameters. So if we look at the first column, it's gender. You can see the countries with higher income. There is no gender gap in access to financial accounts. But there's certain differences in some countries, in Middle East, in Africa, and in some countries, there are gaps in south of Sahara. Also, if you look at the education, the indicator, there's certain differences, not only in the developing countries, but there's a significant difference in South Asia, in Middle East, and the biggest difference, the biggest gap is registered in Africa and south of Sahara region. So the second column on the right, the green point is the population that were lower in education, and the blue point is the adults that have higher education. For example, in African countries south of Sahara, there is a huge difference. So that's analytics from the global organizations. This analytics is very important because the resources given by the World Bank, they're very limited. That's why the main task is to make sure that these limited resources would be used more efficiently, and they shouldn't be spread across all parameters. But we should do like specific work on issues that are relevant as we said, for example, in African countries, in South Sahara, we need to focus on gender, in Middle East on gender issues, but in Sahara, we should emphasize the financial literacy. Allow me to, after we go from financial inclusion to accounts, the main thing is access to loans. And there are different levels from region to region, from country to country. The most problematic region right now it's Africa, but also there are issues in South Asia, of course, because India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Indonesia, these are the countries with big population. In Indonesia, you can add the geography factor there, and the level is quite low there. Access to lending, but allow me to emphasize certain things. As I said before, the share of loans was lower in developing countries. For example, in 2014, it was 16%, but in 2021, it increased. It's gotten 23%. And also, interestingly enough, if you look at countries with higher income, you will see that in developed countries, people rely more on loans from formal, official financial organizations. But in developing countries, you can see that along with financial sectors, it's the loans from friends, loans from relatives. It takes up big share of loans in those regions. So these slides, they were about the international countries, about the regions. Now allow me to point out some indicators in Kazakhstan. 2011, the access to financial accounts was 42%. By 2021, it's 81%. Very good result. As for debit card, in 2011, only 31% had debit card, but 2021, 60% of people had debit card. About the loans, only 9% in 2011. In 2021, 21% had a credit card, so more than twice. So if you look at the yellow bar chart, we can see the the loans from friends, they're decreasing, but in 2021, it increased. Loans from friends, maybe because it's the COVID effect. The savings in financial organizations increased. Also, what's important is that for the past years, the development of digital technologies was going very rapidly. And in 2014, the digital payments accounted for 47%, but in 2021 accounted for 78%, and right now it's maybe more than 78%. As Alexander Leonidovich said, so we have a lot to be proud of in Kazakhstan. So we see very good tendency. And allow me to get to certain examples. So in Global Findex, in this database, it includes more than 100 countries, and it describes the obstacles to improvement of financial inclusion. And of course, there are many developing countries with lower income, and the biggest problem in the world, it's a low income. So the low income, that's why the financial inclusion is also low. The second important category, it's the high cost of financial services, then it's distance to financial institution. Then there are some issues with official documents. There's distrust towards financial institution. Also, there's a religion that could be an obstacle. As for recommendation, of course, financial inclusion in many countries, you can apply direct measures, subsidies, or some guarantees. Or if we look at long-term tendency, long-term trends, we can say that direct measures, they have some effect, but in the long term, the stable effect for financial inclusion, it's the comprehensive measures that aim at institution, at improvement of legislation, especially very important measures to improve infrastructure. It's the improvement of integrated systems. And as it was said before, it's also important to work through the measures aimed at customers. It's the measures to improvement financial literacy, to improve consumers' rights, confidentiality of data, and as we said, we need to pay special attention to vulnerable groups of citizens. So that's the recommendations, that's the main recommendations from the World Bank. As for the internet, it's the second part, infrastructure, access to internet. It has a huge impact, but right now 70% of adults have access to internet through mobile phone or through computer. And the countries with higher level of with income, what's the level of this penetration in Kazakhstan? The access to internet, what's the level in Kazakhstan? Internet and mobile phones, January 22, it was 86% penetration, so which is a very good indicator. And so access to internet. I went over the slides. So if you need more information from the sources, we have all the links, all the databases, they're all publicly available. So the Global Findex database for individuals, for entrepreneurs, for enterprises, for small, medium-sized businesses. So thank you again for inviting me. So Goltar, thank you very much. Very informative presentation. But we have to understand how we should go about the financial inclusion. Like, should we expand a financial product or shouldn't we? We should simplify the financial product. So we see all the risks. So what are the recommendations from the World Bank in terms of financial inclusion in Kazakhstan? Where is this line between the development and stagnation? So again, once again, thank you for the question. It's very important. In Kazakhstan, there are certain issues, but to answer it briefly, let me emphasize just 2 points. Firstly, as it was said, one of the main issues in Kazakhstan, it's the cost of financial products. It's quite high compared to other countries. And in this regard, I think we need to increase and boost competitiveness. One of the recommendations from the World Banks and other financial organizations, it's the specific recommendation around the improvement of open banking, open IPI. And I'm very happy that the colleagues from the National Bank, they presented CDPC. And recently, I think 2 weeks ago, they also did the launch on GPI. It's one of the most important digital technologies that will improve in the long term and in the short term and boost the competitiveness. And through that, it will affect the decrease of cost of financial products. Another part, thank you very much. But before we get to the next speaker, we in this hall we have a very legendary person, Abdulina Nelia Kurmambetovna. So I would like to applaud because she really counted all the Tenge. I remember all that time when I was going to her meeting and I tried to learn everything because it would be very awkward if she asked some question and I wouldn't be able to answer. So before going to her meeting, I would read everything. So thank you very much. I bow to you and thank you for your work. Let's give a round of applause to her once again. Thank you.
Коллеги, переходим
So, dear associates, we are now moving into the next part of our panel session. So obviously, I would like to emphasize that in the modern today's world, more and more amount of financial services are available remotely. And Kazakhstan is now emphasizing a lot in their strategies in financial inclusion, in enlarging their financial services online, payments, which are going to be available for financial products. As according to the Financial Global CIO research, Kazakhstan is now in top 30 most digitally developed countries in the world. And the world rating, Kazakhstan now has a 51st place in the development of informational commodities technology. In 2025, Kazakhstan's government is now planning to enter a top 20 electronic government countries in the world in terms of, and also 500 top countries in business, and into the top 40 countries in the technology development. It's something obviously to be proud of, and we should be proud of. The market of Kazakhstan is one of the most quickly developing in the Central Asia. As the task of our president, we have implemented a national project called with a budget of more than 1.5 billion tenge for providing internet, which is no less than 100 millibit per second for the mass, for the people. And obviously, there's new challenges, new risks with the internet, with the cybersecurity, cyber resilience. When I came, one of the first questions I was asked by the journalists is, what do we do with the fraud? How do we combat it? It's a very good question. It's very now, we should be on alert. Our economy will let this for the country, for the world area. And the main tools for the country is digital Kazakhstan. So I would gladly like to pass the floor to about financial accessibility, a view of Kazpochta, of National Mail. Thanks a lot, Alexander Leonidovich. In fact, actually, I am very happy to be speaking in front of you guys today, because let's say Kazpochta is always at the very top and is always less seen than the rest, but which is good that my previous colleagues' associates' presentation ended by at the topic of the internet, and I'd like to start from that. So at the very beginning, I would first like everyone to know that not the mass media, but as of today, with the National Payment Corporation, we've issued a national digital Tenge. It's a huge project for us as for Kazpochta, that we are taking part in projects with digital vouchers, and this is the pilot that we are now doing with Akimata National Payment Corporation and Wongai, by paying for children's lunches in school with this. This is, again, I'd like to repeat that it's a large scale project for us. It's the first project of this scale, and we would like to be taking part in this kind of projects of this infrastructure. May I please have the clicker? Thank you. So what about the financial inclusion? I would start with the statistics I took them from the ministry, as Alexander Leonidovich has mentioned earlier. When we talk about financial inclusion, we always talk about the accessibility of internet and for it being available in rural areas and villages. And we do have the statistics available now, which was shared with us by the Ministry of Digital Development. In 2023, about 176 villages were connected to the internet, and in 2024, we are also planning to connect 328 villages as well. On the one hand, the statistics are not as, let's say, large, but at the same time, if we encounter the fact that these are the areas, villages located very remotely, very far away, which have about 200 citizens only, that's a very important topic for us. Whenever I speak at the international conferences, I always talk to people and I tell them that Kazakhstan is the 9th country in the world according to as the territory, and for us as a Kazpochta, it's a huge challenge for us to be able to reach one of each person. It's quite far away and expensive to reach people who live in rural, and it's not only financial, it's about the logistics, and it's about everything. So as many of you know, that our Chairman Atel Janasova has met the president, and we have a direction now as a financial operator. And as of today, with a number of state bodies, we have an optimization on the basis of the Kaspochta. We are planning on developing different competencies, and obviously it does touch up on access to internet. If we are to discuss our part, if we're to discuss Kaspochta, we have about 1,976 projects which are only in rural areas, and I'd like to pay attention that 420 of them have no internet connection. And why are we now actively dealing with that and paying closer attention to this? It's because, coming back to our previous topic, we would like to, we see Kaspochta as a community center for development of accessible financial and government services, such as telemedicine and everything is what is needed in very remotely located areas of Kazakhstan. I don't know if you monitor Kaspochta or not, but we've implemented more than 100 rural areas pilot projects where people can come and be serviced for government services. Yeah, whenever we do have this internet available for 1 megabit channel is not enough not enough strength for that. Some of the internet is covered by the satellite and some of it covered by ground, and nevertheless it's quite important for us right now. If we are, as Kaspochta, as government, we want to provide government services for the community. Obviously, it's obvious that we need to increase the speed and the quality of internet. Nevertheless, and what we are now doing is we're not just looking at what the government does with the internet, but we are being requested, and we do have some talks right now. We've now signed a memorandum, let's say, with the Space 6 and One Web in terms of implementing pilot projects for us to be able to try and test their technology, and together to see how can we, from the side of Kaspochta, how can we help encourage that process? And this is the statistics, as you can see on the slide, as in how many departments we have in rural areas, how many of them are connected through the satellite. It's an important topic for us right now. We do realize that we provide lots of a lot of people with financial services, but nevertheless, we'd like to, for these rural areas, for these communities to be able to use digital services, and they can use internet banking, place orders in the marketplace, and vice versa, so that they can actually place their products on those marketplaces. Now, all in all, coming back to the topic of financial inclusion, what I'd like to say is that just a couple of numbers. You know that Kaspochta works as a full-time banking transaction license. Apart from giving loans, we do have lots of pensioners who receive their pensions, their cards of Kaspochta. Me personally, I use the bank card of Kaspochta. Obviously, it hasn't never been really marketed that well, and people have a stigma thinking that Kaspochta is only about mail. But we would like people to know that people who live in rural areas could receive their pensions, the money to their cards of Kaspochta cards, and then they can go to the ATMs and then cash the money out. And then, nevertheless, we do have our own audience. About 200,000 pensioners receive their pensions through Kaspochta cards. And more of a positive statistics that I'd like you to pay attention to of the banks and other financial sectors players. We work with individuals in rural areas and villages. Kaspochta is one of the is the only center where you can actually set up a bank account for a company. It's quite a good for legal entity, why are we now studying the statistics in depth? Because I lead the statistics, the digitalization office of Қазпошта, and we are now transforming internal processes, projects, operations, and external as well, collecting data so that we can fill up the gap that has been, how we have been missing out on, so that the Pochta is falling behind in terms of financial services to any other banks, and we'd like to catch up on that to of the quality of our services. Even for the kind of audiences who are not that demanding, who live in rural areas, but nevertheless would still like to, we are now actively working on that, and we have a relatively large audience which are expecting, they're expecting comfortable, easy, efficient services from us. They're expecting quality, and they are going to be using our apps. And for that, we need them to have good quality internet access. So it shouldn't be only physical, so that we could digitally provide them with the services they need as well. So I'd like to just quickly note that we have some narrowly specialized projects, such as, since until I personally joined Қазпошта as an employee, I haven't heard of them. We have a project called Pension. Apart from having those far away located remote areas, they don't even have departments of Қазпошта, to be honest, because they are relocated too far away, they are too small. But we do also have some social categories of people who are like people that can't move on their own, who are, and for that we have initiated this project called Pension. We've successfully run 2 pilots in Astana and Mangostar region on physically delivering the pension for some categories of people in the community who cannot move on their own. The other one thesis that I'd like to talk about is, why did I name my presentation as the view, the perspective of Қазпошта? Because people when ask me, I say, so how are you guys to transform Қазпошта? What are your intention in terms of digital office and stuff? We do have 2 main directions. It's number one is delivery, couriers and logistics, and the other one, and the second one, that's quite clear for us, let's say. We do have good advantages on that. Obviously, it's clear that we need to improve all of that so that it's delivered quickly, it's delivered on time, and it's delivered as to the exact address where it needs to be directed. But in terms of providing financial services, the tasks that we have a little more challenging. That's because in this area, the fintech, the banking, the financial sector is obviously moving and developing quite actively, and we do have a gap to catch up. We do need to take a leap. Obviously, that's why the task, the objective, is quite large. So we started looking at what are our strengths in our Қазпошта. Obviously, one of the weaknesses is the services, the client's experience is something that needs to be improved and enlarged and worked on. Obviously, we won't say it's impossible, but it's not going to be quite quick. And also what we've chosen for ourselves right now is this kind of niche positioning. Қазпошта is an infrastructure player for the fintech industry. With the National Payment Corporation, what we are planning on developing an open API. And for us, we have everything to be an infrastructural player. We have, starting from a physical infrastructure, it's more than 3,500 departments and offices, finishing. We have our own reporting transaction system. We have our own processing center. We have literally the full cycle of all the services that we might need. And encountering all of that, I would like to tell that we would like to collaborate on to B2B and business to customer, business to business, and provide necessary services for fintech, for payment organizations, for nail banking. And we also do have now large retailers who don't have banking license, but have a client database, and they have their own client experience that they have worked on. And we could be providing them in an API, and the companies could be working on that. They've been providing their niche services. That's what we are moving towards to. For example, right now we are ready to provide any sort of internet payment for any sort of marketplace internet and we also a large number of payment organizations are working with us. We have now established that quite well. Our marketplaces that work with us for delivery, we can provide some certain services which are related to fintech. So it's so-called internet acquiring. Since we don't have a loan license, we would like to have a strong partner who would say a BNPL service to our side so that we can then take it to our marketplaces, so that our goal is for marketplaces have more and more products being sold and bought, so that we have more requests. And then we have the payment receivers, we have the commodities, all the services that we have now. As we've spoken about this service, we have a large module, a block for commodities. Mostly it's the providers of payments who are in regions, and we are ready so that it happens in not only from the banking app, but can be done from different places. We could be providing those API as well. And then just to add up to what I've previously said is that we are moving into the history with Open API. We have completed a large chunk of work in providing Open API for courier companies, and then next year we will partner with the fintech. But the concept itself for us that we have open.post.kz, any marketplace, any logistics company could turn to this and then turn to that and then look for services independently, for the services that will help them improve clients' experience and their applications. And we would like to do the same with the banking side, so that the open data bank will let them issue virtual and offline and cards, and you can even create your own little neobank and then create an interesting transactional bank using the Қазпочта's infrastructure. So I believe this is the direction we're looking to, and I strongly believe that the development of niche banks will ease the competition, will actually encourage the competition. If those who are familiar with venture industry and the startups, you all know that they are developing in very narrow, small niches, quite narrow ones. When we say we have everything is quite clear, yeah, but still those opportunities are always hidden in those small niches, and those businessmen who see this, they actually turn to these opportunities. And us as Қазпочта, we are ready to be as this large infrastructural player. So that's why, to finalize, I'd just like to congratulate everyone on the day of our national currency, and I'd like to invite all of you to partnering and cooperating with Қазпочта in terms of financial services. In collaboration, we could make our national operator as a large national pride, let's say. So if you do have any questions, I'm always going to be happy to reply to your questions. Thanks a lot. That's very interesting. If there are any questions, maybe they could be asked at the end of our session. For providing the security, we have a large scale of measures being accepted by the government for the banking, for the regions who in different areas which are being subsidized, and then lowering the loans, and then for the business which are applied by the banks. One of the key drivers of the development of small business enterprises is obviously the digitalization, which we have discussed earlier. The number of online payments are increasing by the number of the organizations that use internet. So in the past years, the statistics have increased up to 17%, and obviously it's an important case for the country and the region as a whole. Banks provide very good opportunities, which help ease the operations of businesses. they have become that demandable, so that large banks create separate specialized apps and services. All of these decisions let the businesses develop quickly, and obviously for Kazakhstan, become this forming of the small business is crucial to Kazakhstan in the modern day society for Kazakhstan's development. I would now like to pass the floor to the chairman of the Eurasian Bank, chairman of our bank, which has a long history. Basically, the whole Kazakhstan's history is connected with the history of this bank. So Azat Sativa will now talk to you about business and responsibility.
Спасибо.
Alexander Evgenievich, thank you for the opportunity to speak on this panel session. And I'd like to thank everybody and congratulate everybody on the 30th anniversary of our currency. Can we put up the presentation? Just a second, please. Okay, well, until we fix the technical issues. So regarding the access to finance to small enterprises, I think access to financial services, the most important thing, it's the quickness, convenience, and the speed of provision of services, regardless of client status. I would point out 4 main factors for providing access to financial services, which are the key today. First, it's the remote access. ICM already mentioned this, because very often significant part of small enterprises, they are located in rural areas. Secondly, it's the offers from banks, the services and products which are required by companies throughout the whole cycle of the company, life cycle of the company. Alexander Leonidovich already mentioned very important thing. It's the support of state. So it's the third factor in access to finance. It's really important, and it has been existing in Kazakhstan for many years, and I think during the transformation, the state support and the measures of support for small enterprises, it will be there. And also it's important to timely notify the enterprises and to increase the financial literacy. We see that the population of Kazakhstan, small enterprises, they need more or better knowledge in terms of financial literacy. And today, in the world, in the global market today, we have a few trends in providing financial access to small enterprises. One of the trends, if we look at the subsidiary bank of Adem Abro, it's the New 10, the bank that offers digital way for small enterprises. So it's the focus on one product. So other products like the payments, transactions, it's the big subsidiary. They do not provide anything else than that. But there is a focus on one product. This focus allows the player to be one of the leaders in the credit market in small enterprises field. The other direction, as provided in the market, it's the focused development in certain segment. They provide sometimes the comprehensive sector, but in certain area, for example, in restaurant business, so it's specific field oriented for small sales. So it's very structured approach in terms of a specific segment. Also, there are some focuses which are called daily banking, when the financial enterprise provides daily services to companies which needs it for their daily activities. And in Kazakh market, for the most part, our banks, they provide full service and they try to digitalize the services for the small enterprises. Given the turbulence that we have in the market, our clients are very picky and they have huge demands for high quality services. Global analysts say that even in Kazakhstan, the cost of services compared to what our speaker said, the cost of service is not the main obstacle for making decision when choosing the bank. First of all, they're worried about the quality and the service and the geographical affordability. So these three key factors, which make up 60% of all interest for the customers of small enterprises. So as of today, the digitalization, which we luckily have, and Alexander Leonidovich said we're in top 30 countries of developed digitally countries. Given that factor, the bank community is happy, but at the same time, it is forced to digitalize all the services for small businesses. And I think you see that some colleagues, they have digitalized most of their products for small enterprises. So now we're talking about providing additional service, not banking service, some accounting, some legal consultations, marketing, and so on and so forth. We understand that despite the fact what Alexander Leonidovich said, whether do we need such huge presence of banks in the life of customers, I think we are forced to be present on each stage of the life cycle of our customer. It starts with the onboarding of the client when he just considers opening his enterprise. We can do it already in the mobile application. Then we talk about the opening accounts, about services. Then they create separate mobile application. As you know, all banks, all advanced banks, they have application for individuals. They have applications for entities. Mostly it's focused on small enterprises because the small enterprises, small businesses, it's the clients who, let me reiterate, have very high demands for services because they know how they can get services in physical areas. But at the same time, it's not corporate clients where you have more opportunities to gain commissions. But the smaller enterprises, they have the gray areas and have high risks, so banks have to digitalize all the customers' way. If we talk right now about the beginning of growth of life cycle of the company, when company has just been opened, I think the whole life cycle of the company, it will be digitalized up to a point where you have to apply for closing of the company on the applications of the banks. And that's what all my colleagues are working on in the banking industry, the full digitalization of all services for small entities. And on the side of banking industry, it will give full availability to provide all banking services, and so we'll have to work on the internet, on the speed of the internet. Okay, thank you. Let's give a round of applause. You talk with such warmth about the clients. I think your bank has a huge future with you at the head. I think it's really nice to hear from you, to hear from ahead when you talk with such warmth and love. I think you have this need to provide such high-quality services. So thank you very much. Thank you for the warmth that we heard in your speech. I think your clients will be very thankful for your work and that we do for the development. So I'd like to support Lizat because I was once in a mountainous country and I saw how my colleagues and my group, we were paying with our cards, we were transferring money. Somebody try to buy something. So, and how easy and simple it was, even though we were at a high altitude, 5,000 meters. And of course, it depends on the internet. But I saw how the group was using the services very easily. I saw the issues that the European colleagues had when they were trying to make payments. So you have to really appreciate that when you have a connection with your country, when you have a card, it doesn't have, it has the services that you need. We were very proud of this. In some separate European countries, we were like picking on them that your cards are not working there, but our Tenge is only 30 years old, but it works there. So to develop any financial system, we need trust and sustainability from the financial services. Sustainability is observed through many factors, which was recognized by the world practice. So it's one of these. It's the insurance guarantee fund. It's the trust of Kazakh banks in the protection of rights of depository. And Kazakhstan guarantees all the funds in the depositories and gives guarantees to all the participants, for individuals, for legal entities, in all bank accounts. So since 2022, the worth of deposits in Kazakhstan was 18.6 trillion tenge, in national currency 32 trillion tenge, and so lately the deposits of physical and legal entities, they became very important for the industry. For the past 10 years, there has been a huge transformation of the structure of funding in the banks. Based on the global practice, the increase of access to finance, the raising awareness, and the generating stability for the financial sector. I'd like to give the floor as a consumer of financial services. I would like to give the floor Lizat. You remember how we were watching the currency rates? We were trying to put everything in deposits. We were afraid that we would lose money. And the creation of such institutes, people feel protected now, feel more safe, feel more confident, because everyone can understand that there is a service that allows our citizen to go to bed with calm mind and not being afraid. Very unique programs that allowed us to, it was all these transitions that happened very calmly, and it was very safe for people. By working with complaints, we understood that there were very few complaints because fund worked through all the compensation and created such a convenient instrument. So I'd like to give the floor to Adil Utimbayev, the chairman of Kazakhstan Deposit Insurance Funds. So we'll talk about the access to finance and about deposit insurance funds. Alexander, thank you very much. I'd like to congratulate everybody on the 30th of anniversary of Tenge. I'd like to thank the organizers, National Bank, Agency for Regulation of the Market, First of all, I would like to talk about why we need guarantee funds. First, were created after the Great Depression as a reply to the crisis, and in all countries, these systems were created as a response to some negative financial events, but the appearance of these systems allowed to increase the financial stability and to increase the trust for financial system, because we are, as a guarantee fund, we work for our population, and we need to provide the security of people's funds. So we have to provide the return of all the funds that are in the banks, second-tier banks. So I'd like to point out that Kazakhstan, along with other 100 countries, is International Insurance Association. One of the key conditions is that of IADI is that guarantees should be paid to more than 90% of insured after the insurance case happens. It should be paid out within 7 days, and the notification of the population about the guarantee systems, it eliminates the risks of panic. Also, these guarantee funds, they do not guarantee in all the funds. Also, in Kazakhstan, we have huge systemic banks. Just like in Kazakhstan, in the world practice, they have other types of regulation. So systems guaranteed, deposit guarantee, they should cover medium banks, average banks, but for big banks, we have other mechanisms. Also, I'd like to say that in the global practice, the guarantee funds, it's not just the pay box, the wallets that only pay awards, but there's different mandates. Some funds have the ghost minimizer funds when they participate in the regulation, in the settlements of the banks. Also, there are difficult structured funds which serve as regulators. They participate actively in regulating the bank, and they have mandate for as a risk minimizer. On this slide, we'd like to show the financial inclusion in numbers. So you can see it by regions. Alexander Evgenievich said deposits of of individuals worth 18.6 trillion tenge. We try to understand which regions is it located in. Of course, Almaty, Astana is the leaders, but the distribution in other regions is very even to a certain extent. Also, for the past year, we had a 19% growth of accounts, 132 million of accounts. So the depository guarantee fund covers 99.8% of accounts. So only 0.2% of accounts are not covered by guarantee. So it's the big deposits. I think it speaks volumes about the financial inclusion and financial accessibility, that most of the population can be safe about money. So we have 19 banks members, except Islamic banks. We, as Alexander Yurich says, we guarantee all the funds, not only deposits, the bank cards, everything. We do not distribute between resident and non-resident. So any person which is included, is a part of these 19 member banks, he's covered by our guarantee. Recently, the amount of guarantee has increased. The whole amount of guarantees 20 million tenge within the limits that were set for each type. So it's the 5 million in foreign currency, 10 million for all tenge accounts, and we have 20 million for all saving deposits, which has certain limitations for withdrawal and for loss of rewards. Right now, the amount of special reserve is 1.1 trillion tenge, which is 6% from the whole depository base of individuals and enterprises. So people need not to be worried about the safety of their deposits. Our reserves are as high as ever, and I think that's the best indicator how the bank industry of Kazakhstan is quite stable. So, with regards to the access of customers, when the bank loses its license, of course, it's a very uncomfortable situation for the people. We need to pay within 7 days. So, in the left chart, you can see the statistics by country. See how many countries have legislation when they pay within 7 days and how pay within more than 7 days. Just when we had some cases when Bank and Group were losing license in 17 and 18, the payments, they waited more than 200 days. It was the record because previously the guarantee fund was waiting for the court decision. After the license was lost, the court case started. Then only after that we waited, and then we were making the we had to create and pay. So we have 35 days according to law. This includes 20 days for making decision for P&L agency. Together with agency, we do so-called plan for resolution. This allowed us for the last 3 cases, Tеңге Bank, Asia Credit Bank, and Capital Bank of Kazakhstan. So we almost achieved the global level that we need. So the people did not wait as so long. And last year we finished the payments for all the banks. And here what's interesting is that the payment was, there were 11 banks that lost their license, and more than 420,000 people turned to us. We paid more than 115 billion Tenge, and we paid 830 million to the National Pension Fund. So the transfer of money to pay National Payment Fund is a new thing for Kazakhstan, because historically, if the person was not able to turn before the liquidation, he would lose them. He wouldn't be able to return this money. But we had very few people with small money. So we had a lot of people with a 1,000 threshold. Some depositors, they just decrease. They just don't close their deposits. There were a lot of amounts with 8,000 to get, 10,000 to give. People do not turn to banks for these small amounts. And our task was we had to come up with mechanism, even if he doesn't want to request this money. So legislatively, we created a norm when, for example, he doesn't turn, then we put the money to the Unified Pension Fund. It means that the depositor, it will get its money. So he doesn't have to wait until the pension period. So he can get them earlier. Given the latest norms, he can use them earlier. So we think that this norm is progressive.
So we talked to different countries, and they all face this problem, that it's quite challenging for small deposit companies for them to deliver their savings. So for those who are not there, it's for us to give back their money back. And talking about financial inclusion, it's important to carry out the works on informing the mass people. The latest cases in USA, they've shown that in the social media, it's a mechanism that makes the bank run quite fast. So why do the Silicon Valley banks, they have this kind of, because they had group chats and WhatsApp, on Telegram, and they started talking to each other in the group, and all of that kind of led to the bank being destroyed. So for us, it's about delivering this about the bank. So what we try to tell them is guaranteeing whatever happens to the bank, please don't worry. You will get your savings. You will receive the money. You won't have to wait for 35 days. And we will be paying that. So all of the people who are informed, and they do kind of provide this potential bank run, no matter if the bank has problems or not, what's being written about that in the media or not. So also it's important, an important initiative is that increasing the awareness of the system of deposits. So we've taken a step forward within this. Whenever we have to create a bank account and the mobile phone, and what they show is what's the amount of guarantees. So the person one realizes that when one opens an account, the deposit is about 10 million Tenge. So with the Agency of Regulating Financial Area, what we'd like to know is that it's clear that when a person sets a deposit, they see a certain bid. So we do have all sorts of debts, withdrawals, different conditions for that. All of that's written in the contract, and obviously no one is going to. I do understand. I know that they need to go through and read the contract, but for us to make it easier for people to understand, what we're now working on is on making all of this for people, so that the key definitions of a deposit were portrayed, were displayed. So last Friday we just had a conceptual discuss of the financial of the banks. We've discussed a necessary list of information into the amendment of 136 of amendment. Starting from next year, I believe we will have people will be a little more informed whenever opening an account and deposit. And we do carry out a large work on increasing financial literacy. Thanks a lot, Alexander Gennadievich, first of all, to you, so that for your support in our work and increasing people's financial literacy. Thanks a lot, Ali. What you've said is that it's important. It's important to read out the contract. So no matter what happens, whatever case is, whenever they come to a financial institution, they take the contract, they take it back home, they read it through, look through, discuss it with their colleagues, their peers, their relatives, because it's important for people to understand the contracts that they sign, so that they are being understood. People could actually be aware of what they're signing, because for deposits, people do not always read the contract, do not always control the implementation of the, especially when the deposit time is timing out. Sometimes they do have an automatic prolongation, sometimes they don't. So for the journalists, especially, the thesis would be is that all of the contracts need to be looked through, read through, so that there are no mistakes later to be. So what's important into including a base? I'd like to give the floor to the accessibility of financial services, covering all the social groups of the people, and the main objective of the fund is providing a full insurance payments. So what I'd like to make my emphasis on is the success. In the past 5 years, it has increased 2 times. The volume has increased. The amount of insurance contracts have increased almost 2 times. 86% of them are with individuals. The volumes of insurance payments have increased to 2.5 times and have reached 140 billion tenge. As of 2023, the insurance payment fund has paid out money for a total amount of 66 million tenge. The main driver of the growth is the development of digitalization in the insurance area. As you can see, almost everyone now purchases the insurance online. But let me repeat that again. It's important to read through the contracts and stuff. And those who do travel insurance or risk extreme sports, and whenever people they purchase an insurance, for example, 5,000 tenge, and they think whenever something happens, an extreme situation, your insurance will include something like a helicopter ride. So please be aware of what you're buying, what you're signing. So I'd now like to pass the floor to Bahar Akhagulov about the insurance payment and providing services. Thanks a lot. Thank you, Alexander Alvinovich. I congratulate everyone with the professional holiday, wishing everyone a great success and financial stability. The insurance area is one of the most dynamically developing industries. I try to show the statistics, how the market is being developed, and what are the actives, what are the indicators of the insurance payment guarantee funds and stuff. As the slide shows, in 2007, the system of guarantee had only 2 groups, and it took about 6% of all the insurance payment. As of 2023, we have all necessary classes, and it compiles about 40%. The insurance payment guarantee fund was founded in 2003. And as of right now, the shareholders are the market. So at this slide, what you can see is the data of the International Association. September 1st, 2022, we entered the IFIGS. And just like recently at the annual group meeting in Canada, we were chosen as to be the first. We were chosen the first by the IFIGS, by the chairman, according to the rules of this international association. In 2025, our fund will be leading the international association. And in that very same year, we are going to need an international conference in Almaty. We're going to have to hold a conference. So what does this international association kind of grant us? It's an opportunity for us to exchange experience, to implement best international practices, and then use it in our fund here. At this slide, we've demonstrated a current situation, how the system is functioning today. We have the analysis. We have an agency which is responsible for financial supervision, and then when the insurance organization is not complying to their norms, and then we have to move on to this stage where we implement sanctions, and which is most commonly it's the liquidation, and then that's when the fund takes place. If I'm not mistaken, in 2022 there were some changes, amendments into the law on that, and in case of bankruptcy of an insurance company, a fund will have to transfer the portfolio using the reserves. So in 2022, we started carrying out different stress tests in terms of to try and identify how it will be in case of an emergency, if how will the fund be able to cope with that, as the stress test has demonstrated, and as you have seen the statistics. We do have some questions and some issues in terms of financing the fund. In 2022, we successfully solved this issue with the market. In collaboration, we've identified the benchmarks which are good for general insurance, especially for life insurance, and we are now actively working on achieving the standards of this benchmark. In 2025, we are believed to have achieved the standard, which is like a common accepted norm standard, let's say. Here, what we've portrayed is the case how it is in the international practices. We have recently held a conference where we had our main international colleagues, and we've exchanged experience. It we've spoken that in the international practices, it encounters a different stages of responsibility, and obviously it could be used for insurance payment funds such as Paybox, Cas Plus, minimization of your risk minimizer, let's say. So in 2022, we worked closely with the market, and at the end of the year, we have accepted a concept which is being implemented in our strategy. So we've set ourselves as an objective, as an aim in 2023-25 as an implementation of the measurements of risk minimizing. So the essence of this mandate is not just collecting contributions, but also having some certain responsibility, certain authority. Have just as enough access to information of the certain model of the stress test, and have necessary programs, and obviously identify the instruments and the tools, and the most importantly is have the authority, the power to intervene at an early stage. So the principle of the less minimum resources. So it's easier to regulate the situation when the financial organization has a problem, and with the money of the fund that could have been regulated, rather than having a case when we have to transfer the portfolio. What's cheaper, to kind of transfer the portfolio or intervene at an early stage? So the second point that I'd like to stress on is, as a trend, as is now happening everywhere, is a digitalization. This very slide, what we demonstrate is that digitalization of an insurance. We have included electronic policies. In 2019, what we had is integration of an insurance data with government data. In 2022, we had some information of voluntary information being included, and starting from January of 2024, what will be issued is an online regulation on compulsory insurances. So whenever we purchase an online insurance, and then on all the necessary platforms, what we could do is receive the payments. So also from January, we will have mass media information as a fund, which we are actively working on as a fund. Here, what we've displayed is a strategy that FEGS, IGS. Obviously, the insurance market is actively implemented a digitalization, but as a fund, what we've carried out is a strategy of creating a digital area, which includes the integration of resources of IFEGs with the state bodies, with government organizations, creating an analytical database, implementing business processes of the international guarantee systems, and also, what's important is providing information security, since we have an integration of creating back end, front end. All of these resources are going to have to be protected. What I'd briefly like to mention here is the Euro Protocol, which is an app which is being developed by the fund. Our partner is the first credit bureau, credit loan bureau, which has a large experience in digitalization. So we are now at the stage of finalizing the testing. We hope that by the end of November, beginning of December, we will have them finalized and we'll have them registered in the necessary state bodies, and it's going to be possible for people in Play Market and the App Store, for them to download these apps and then use them starting from January 1st. We do hope this will be the case and people will be actively using it. One of the main points of this is that a car accident is something where only there's two participants, only two cars, no casualties. Both have insurance, both members, and then the damage is less than 100 MRP. And there are no conflicts between the drivers. So including this Euro Protocol, it's going to be the period of this whole project claiming the loss will be shortened up to 6 days. What we've shown here is how all of the realization of this mandate system, digitalization, will affect the financial inclusion. If what we have in the middle is the digital, we have all projects here developing to, so that's when we see the role of an early stage intervention in case of, if it's getting worse, if there's a chance of bankruptcy. In case of digitalization, we have a protocol for the fund, so that the fund is one of the members of the system, and we see all of the processes, we see all of the applications, and whenever one of the insurance companies are turning bankrupt, then we can turn and then provide straight payments, like direct payments, and or maybe we could authorize a certain insurance company and then we could finance that. So this is the way we hope that we will provide a non-stop continuous activity of financial organization. Well, that was my brief presentation. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for your presentation. For me, for the one who's familiar with the system, that was a pretty fruitful, pretty effective presentation. I would like to request all of us speakers to collect all of the presentations and then provide the journalists with this. And my dear associates, I would now like to add something myself. One of the important moments is about financial inclusion. It's reporting on the job that has been carried out in this area. One of the most important areas of the agency is increasing financial inclusion for people with disabilities. Financial inclusion. 2023 for the Commission of People with Disabilities named after Iman Aliyev, we have a special working group functioning. We've worked on that. We used to fight a lot on that, discuss and debate, and then even get mad at each other with Lazat Sambivna, because that's an important work. But we have now come to an end almost. As a foundation of our discussions that we have done, we have developed a recommendation methodological a methodological approach for people with disabilities. Yes, we have looked into world practices, experiences. We've discussed that for like 3 years. All of these methodological recommendations, we have worked on them again and again, because there are some questions.
So we ratified it with the President in 2023 by the order of Minister of Integration. We established national standard requirements for organization to provide services to the physically challenged people. It's a huge, comprehensive joint work that we did together. I'm thankful to our financial institution. It was not easy. We see currently that the banks slowly, step by step, they're actively turning to people with disabilities. 350 offices in 27 cities of our countries are equipped with the necessary tools for people with hearing disabilities and other disabilities. We're developing these standards. We will develop individual plans to adjust our offices for people with disabilities. I would like to thank our representatives of financial sector for their special and huge work, and the ministries that we worked together with. We did huge work, and we're trying to establish the standards, so thanks to all for that. I'd like to direct your attention that the national standards suggest the access in the offices, access to finance to the people with disabilities. So it sets certain protocols for these categories, and it raises awareness and the increased expertise for people, for the personnel as well. I would like the Association of Financiers did a huge work, so we are very proud of this, and we will be working very closely on that. So, thank you very much on behalf of the all financial world. So she paid really huge attention to that. So, colleagues, let's move on. We have very little time. So the question related to financial literacy and access to finance are very important in our countries. Very important. Very often this work is hidden. It's not recognized. We have sometimes very strict discussions among the Association of Financiers, among the national banks. They are introducing the best practices and strategies in the area of consumer rights protection and in the informational work. I'd like to say that from 2016 to 2022, the work is being done by the National Bank together with the agencies to regulate the financial market. More than 50 key amendments were passed aimed at improving the consumers' rights in financial area. In 2016, we banned the loans in foreign currency. Many developing countries, including Europe, still crediting their customers in foreign currency, which leads, due to change of currency, it leads to debt and leads to insolvency. And when loans in foreign currency were banned, they go past the currency exchange points, and so they're not worried. So it's a daily work. This daily work happens. So we made huge work in that area. We have some questions regarding the fraud, and it requires serious attention and serious coordination of all government bodies. As for increase of financial literacy, systematically agencies with the ministries, they do work to increase the financial literacy as part of this concept. This concept was created in 2022, 2023. I would like to say that 1st of September 2022, the head of state in his message to the nation instructed to expand the project, no debt, across the country. A lot of work was done in this regard with the Association of Ministries, with the banks, with the agencies, together with the Amanat Party. They developed a roadmap to spread this project across all regions. This map suggests three directions. First directions is about the development of methodological informational cards for students and pupils, and it encourages the media to be engaged also. This is very important. We need to train our students, our pupils, to be financially aware so that by adulthood he understands how card works. He needs to understand how his parents get his money and how money is earned, that you need to treat them with care, that you need to store them, you need to take care of them, how to use the main instruments provided by our bank. So it's very important. So this allows to achieve success in close cooperation with each other. Secondly, we need to create a regional group where pupils or other people would be educated. The third direction will be about the concessional lending, and this is a responsibility of local authorities. I would like to give the floor to our speaker, Ilzat Usinbekova. This is the Consumer Protection Director, Association of Kazakhstan Finances, which will talk about the importance of balance and the financial literacy and the financial availability of access to finance. Even though we often discuss this, the huge work that we are doing together, it deserves special recognition. So I would like to give the floor to you. So, Alexander Leonid, thank you very much for giving me the floor. Thank you for a very fruitful discussion. I would like to join in on the congratulation on the 30th anniversary. I will be very succinct, very short, because we are very limited in time. Well, the theme of the session is the access to finance, financial inclusion. How is it defined by the World Bank? It means that the individuals, the persons separately, and the entities should have equal access to very beneficial financial products and services. Firstly, it's the savings, deposits, payments, credits, insurance, and other variety of financial products that should be provided to responsible on a sustainable and permanent basis. To look at the balance of interest and about the financial inclusion, we want to draw your attention to two factors and two reviews. First review was done by our Association of Financiers in September this year about the influence of concessional programs on mortgage market. First sub-point here, it's the handing out mortgages. So if we look at these charts, at these diagrams, we can see that with the start of concessional lending, these market programs, they are in gray here. The volumes of programs, they were decreasing. They reached minimum in 2020, and then they developed only after the state concessional programs, and the funding for them was decreasing. So this growth, 9% growth, it reached this year 22%, the share of market products. It means that in these conditions, the supply is decreasing, supply of products. If we talk about the state programs, we think that these programs should exist, but we need to look at their criteria, at how they're given. We need to understand how this issue is solved at the social level. we need to talk about the vulnerable groups of population. Then the second sub-point, it's the influence of dynamics of big participants of market. Of course, after the amounts were depleting, were decreasing, and the concentration decreased. So we need to understand that after operator said it decreased from 4 to 5 participants. So Freedom Finance Bank also joined that. So we see the very sustainable growth. A lot of situation can happen with people who were given the loans. His social financial status can change during the loaning. Of course, as the expiration period goes on, some loss of work condition can happen. He can lose his life when he has kids. And the criteria for receiving, we should focus on the vulnerable groups of citizens. But right now, when we throw out certain pool for certain quarter, during 15 minutes, it's used up. Those who know about the finances, that's for them. But then they wait until the next quarter. And people cannot get these loans, those who really need it. And we did another analysis, did another research. I would like to. It's a research done by International Monetary Fund. It's the protection of borrowers. It's called Evidence from Foreclosure Law. So this is document of Monetary Fund. This remark not from the Monetary Fund. It's the feedback comments from the authors, and it was presented for further development of other research. And we need to pay attention before we do further research. So we were looking at the legislation issues in the area of foreclosure in case of bankruptcy. If we're talking about the mortgage, housing mortgage, here it could be done in court, in the as a criminal case, and it's very expensive to the borrower. So we compare different legislation of U.S. In each state, they have their own laws, they have their own sets of law, and in those states where you could do it only in court of law, compared to states where you could do it in court and outside of court, the offers of mortgage is reducing. They're really reducing. So these legislative norms, they really influence the amounts of mortgages. They're reduced. They're lower than 3% compared to states where you could do it outside of court. The prices on housing are lower because there are less deals, and there's a high chance of rejection because the creditors need to have some guarantee, because they may be some consequences after that. So when there is a balance, when there is no balance in the agreement, there is a negative effect on the loan, on the credit. So we suggest that we make the following conclusion. How important it is to keep the balance between the interests of the parties in terms of financial inclusion. Because if the balance tilts towards the consumer, then there will be decreased supply of products. But it applies to all financial products. If balance tilts towards the supply of products, then the products will be less available, and the availability will decrease, the inclusion will decrease. This is our topic for today. And when we make the decision about adopting new norms in the legislation, whether it's the consumers' rights or whether it's suppliers' rights, we need to take into account the analysis, the norms, the implications for the risks, their proof. We need to take into account their behavior and the creditors and the opportunities and all the consequences that are important for the consumers and suppliers. In combination, they have consequences for the economy as a whole and for the well-being of the population. It's the financial literacy. We need to look at this. If we look at the financial literacy, if it's at the high level, then the consumer will be very picky when he comes to services. If his financial organization will be competing for him, then consumers will be understanding the factors. If the risks, they are transparent, the risks will be understandable, then there will be inclusion, financial inclusion on all markets. It's just ABCs of financial literacy. It means that digitalization is happening, new technologies are appearing, it requires financial literacy. And the new products are appearing, everything is happening online, even between the countries. So to use these new applications, you need heightened, enhanced financial So you start using online services, they start using them at an earlier age. Some teenagers, they have the bank cards, so you need the improved financial literacy for teenagers, for adults, for workers, for employees, because all these tendencies, they require adequate estimation of risks. And if we do all the training and take all the educational measures, and if we understand all the social responsibility, if we increase the financial literacy, we will have better financial inclusion. And just would like to speak shortly about the suggestions that were given from Organization of Economical Cooperation and Development for Strategy and Financial Education of Republic of Kazakhstan. So it was suggested that we had to create systems of coordination and management, that we had to attract key stakeholders like Ministry of Education, the local authorities, and other interested stakeholders. We had to develop systems of evaluation of efficiency of all taken measures, and the suggestion of our Association of Financiers. We had to take a conceptual approach that would allow and that would increase all the risks, the position of regulators, the elimination of legal risks, the elimination of copying and duplicating, and we had to do the risk assessment on each activity, on all plans. And we had to make sure that all information is in the right order, is in the right form, and is socially available. It's the TV, social media, advertising, the monitors that we see in public transport, in social service centers. We have the digitalization going on, but sometimes the information is not very beneficial, not very useful. But if they put up some very interesting videos, like 2-3 minute videos, everything would be clear for loans, for deposits, and they would play in all social service centers or in a subway station. It would be very good. Also, we suggest that we attract more people in school education, and we encourage them to pay more attention to that. Also, we have to use such instruments as a product places. When you watch the Russian TV series, we clearly see the product placement. You just watch regular TV series, some melodrama, but they show some financial services. Some protagonist went somewhere, he got into trouble, he went somewhere, and then the viewer gets this useful information. Also, it's important to talk about the engagement of state sector, about the state development. There is for example, state order for TV. Not everybody's watching TV. The state order, so that they would allocate some share, this 1 minute, 2 minute videos, so that they could place them on TV, and so that people would watch it, they would get some information, and those who are armed with information, they can be protected and they can be secure. And just last thing, bloggers and finers, it's also very popular. And everybody's listening to them right now, and they should influence as well. If we do some discussions with them, many will respond to that, many will participate in these events. Thank you very much. So all our speakers made sure that we keep to the time limit and try to share their information. We're almost out of time, so I would like to thank the speakers, and it's very important that we need to provide certain level of security, availability of our services, and provide the informational services and educational services. Well, one of the key tasks of the agencies as part of this direction, we have to enhance the banking ombudsman field. So the Institute of Ombudsman, it exists in most of the regions of the country. So when we touched on that, why do we have ombudsman here? Because we had a mortgage bubble in 2014, 2015 that led to having lots of citizens that were not able to pay, and the share of debt was 100% of NPL. Other shares, according to our official statistic, was 30% of insolvency. According to other ratings, it was up to 60%. So all mortgage portfolio was problematic, and that time there was a question, how can we find the alternative solution to that? There was idea that we find ombudsman that would recognize the interest of banks, of borrowers, and could find this balance. So through these joint efforts, at the request of the ministry or the request of the president, we were able to burst this bubble, to deflate this bubble through the banks and defend the interest of the customers. Now the share of problematic loans is 4.7%. 4.7. So for the first time, it's so low. So 4.7% of problematic loans.
So therefore, the world practices what they say, that it's necessary to develop international institutes. All of the financial regulators dream of, let's say, passing of the majority of their problems to an ombudsman who would be able to solve these problems on their own. And I would like to pass the floor to Darhan Nurpiyev, a banking ombudsman, a PhD and Masters of MBA. He will discuss the future development of this area. Thanks a lot, Alexander Leonidovich. Obviously, it's definitely, this topic is quite important within the light of today. Even though we've tried to solve a number of problems in the mortgage area, but still we do have some new issues arising, and I will talk about them. I try to be short. I do understand we've been working for quite a long time. And just briefly, when we try to do regulatory the basement of an ombudsman is the constitution. The foundation for the ombudsman acts as the foundation. And obviously, the regulatory acts about the competences, the deadlines, the times, and everything that regarding to banking. And the representative chairmans, I'd like to mention that the Institute of Banking Ombudsman is the only one of pre-judicial regulation, the decisions of which have a necessary. It's a selective position. It's selected by the authorities of the banks and consumers protection. And obviously, it's an internal set of rules of banking ombudsman, which determines the deadlines of requirements of requests and applications. The main functions of a banking ombudsman, number one is looking and accepting requests of individuals regarding mortgages, and the second one is acceptance and consideration of applications of mortgage and loans without the decision. It's holding the meetings and providing recommendations without the decision. And the third areas of banking ombudsman's activity is increasing on financial literacy. I'd like to highlight that the banking ombudsman's activities dedicated to financial literacy and increase in financial literacy. I'd like to mention that financial literacy is becoming much more protective. Let's say even that without the banking ombudsman, people would turn to banks, but with the banking ombudsman, the access to the financial banking services is a little more protected. So this institution is much more convenient than the judicial system. So to an individual person, it's easier to turn to a physical person, to another individual, to get a free consultation and free legal assistance. And there are no costs, no short deadlines, as it's the case with the judicial consultation. The role of banking ombudsman in developing in a banking system. Number one is regulating conflicts. Since we act as an independent legal body, an arbiter between the bank and their clients, this is improving the regulatory acts. The ombudsman interacts with the banks and the individuals, and obviously increasing the trust to the banking system, since if the consumers of those financial banking services are more protected, therefore their trust to the banking system. For the banks being inclusive and accessible, their trust will increase. The principles of a banking ombudsman's activity is obviously number one is independence. The independence of a banking ombudsman from a financial regulators and banks that lets the ombudsman a chance to look at being non-biased. Yeah, that's the objectivity. That's not letting any sort of bias in or advantages to any of the sides. And obviously that's it's legal sides, because ombudsman only is based on legal sides. Obviously, it's important. We had lots of questions in terms of, as in banking ombudsman cannot always change the conditions of the change of the banking contracts. It's the main principle of civilian acts. So basically, the contract can be changed only by the side that created the contract. So our side can be like an arbiter for this side, so that the bank will go on to changing the contract by accepting additional agreements. And the other one is the equality of the sides. I agree with ژلттық who said that in this case it's important to note that the principle of balance of interest, that interests are neutral, are balanced. Since if there isn't enough interest, not just for banking, but for all the banking, for all the economy, the principles of independency. A banking's ombudsman is chosen by an anonymous voting by the members of the board. The second one, a banking's ombudsman of Kazakhstan is independent from a financial regulator and the banks. An ombudsman is only responsible, reports to the board of the representatives. So ombudsman is an independent body. And the third of, and also it's a financial independency. Banking ombudsman offices are financed and sponsored independently. So what are the challenges and issues that require the banking ombudsman's competencies enlargement? So what we're now looking into is a legal act on improving of the banking activity, including the development of banking ombudsman. And one of the main challenges is it's growing, that there's an increasing number of requests turning to a banking ombudsman. We look at about 100 requests, applications per month. I'd like to say that in the past 5 years, we had an increase in other banking services, which is about 60% of the majority of applications that are being placed into bank. So what I'd like to highlight is that obviously the percentage of mortgages and loans have decreased. So, but at the same time, as you can see at this graph, the number of other consumer loans, other banking products are increasing, and during the last 5 years, the percentage of mortgage loans are consist less than the number of applications. So that means that we should go hand in hand with these challenges and adjust the legal acts accordingly. Since the Institute of Banking Ombudsman was implemented in 2011, and in that case, that time there was a problem with mortgages. There was an increase, so the main attention of the government was directed to this mortgage problems. That's why the situation has dramatically changed since that time. So right now the problems, the top issues that are different right now, and the government should match that. So what are the advantages of the banking ombudsman's functional enlargement widthening will give? So what I'd like to say that is now there is a legal act that is being looked at. Number one is the developing the so kind of to increase the trust of the banking consumers to the system. The second part is increasing a regulated conflict before the judicial act, before the trial, pre-trial cases, by reducing the volume of work to the judges, judiciary system, and financial regulation agencies. Also to kind of open a larger, to ease the responsibility of work to other bodies, to kind of take up the work of other bodies so that they have less work, less challenges. What are the main changes of this law is that the competences of the banking ombudsman are going to be enlarged. So the competencies of him will include all sorts of banking loans. If we are now looking into only something that's being, as of right now, what we are looking at is trying to monitor and regulate all sorts of conflicts from banks and banking services. So what I'd like to highlight is that there's quite a lot of responsibilities, but there's like a lot of requests regarding to the card systems or servicing the deposits, the cash flow, the cashiers and ATMs, so all of these things should be covered by the competencies and functionalities of a banking ombudsman. And the times of a banking ombudsman are increasing from 2 to 5 years, and then there is a higher list, a larger list of requirements for a candidate to be an ombudsman. If we are to discuss about international practices, I'd briefly like to mention that there's about a little bit more than 60 or 70 countries of the world 70 countries of the world have this practice. For example, in USA and Canada, a banking ombudsman has a large responsibility in playing part in regulating the conflicts. In Europe, an ombudsman is successful in more than 95% of complaints. In Singapore and other Asia, banking ombudsman also takes part in regulating those conflicts and complaints. And from former CIS countries, the countries that do have an ombudsman is Armenia, that have taken this law in 2008, and also the Russian Federation in 2018. They have implemented a law about financial authority, and Kazakhstan in 2011 has also included this in their law about bank and banking activity. When it comes to international cooperation, the Banking Ombudsman of Kazakhstan is a member of an INFO network, which is an international ombudsman net, which has about more than 61 countries. It's important to note that the members of this organization, not all the countries that do have an ombudsman are members of this organization, but the Kazakhstan's banking ombudsman is a member of a committee where they have where it has Russia, Kazakhstan, Armenia, Belarus, and Kazakhstan. So to just conclude, I'd like to say that it's important. The independence is the main principle. Being non-biased, being neutral is the main principle of an ombudsman, which helps increase the trust of the users. Since the banks are sure that the ombudsmen are not depending on the government, whereas the financial sector users are sure that the financial ombudsman is that, so that the users know that the ombudsman is interested in helping them. Also, is like a legal increase in requirements for an ombudsman, which will help to create a more qualified service, more quality. And also fairness and justice and trust. More financial ombudsman will cover that will kind of help to decrease the social tension, because most clients, most applicants will be able to solve their problems before the trial, without having to go to the court. Yeah. So obviously, the users, the clients, the consumers are in great benefit because of this ombudsman. They will be able to solve their complaints and conflicts in a little more easier manner, and the banks will be able to keep their reputations, because those people will not have to go to court. So banking ombudsman helps the financial abilities of a client to increase, and in general it benefits the society and the country as a whole. Thanks a lot for your attention. Tarhan, thanks a lot for such an interesting presentation. At the end of our session, I'd like to thank to each of the speakers today who spared their time and took part. I'd like to mention that the financial inclusion is a base fundamental package of financial services. No matter where people live or how much money they make, they should all have financial accessibility, financial inclusion. As you can see in Kazakhstan, this is being paid great attention to in Kazakhstan. Increasing financial literacy and awareness helps improve the market. So therefore, this kind of work should be ongoing and should keep going. Thanks a lot, dear colleagues. I'd hope to see you all when we celebrate 50th anniversary of Tenge. I would now like to invite all of the members of our session to take pictures so that we can then compare our pictures when we are now, when we're celebrating the 30th, and then when we celebrate the 50th anniversary of Tenge. Thank you very much.